The massive space station hung in the void like a silver cathedral, its towers reaching toward the distant stars. Admiral John Hayes stood at the observation deck of the human transport ship, watching the Galactic Council headquarters grow larger. As they approached, behind him, diplomat Lisa Rodriguez checked her files one last time while Commander Carl Bennett reviewed security protocols. Hayes had been to this station many times over the past 20 years. Each visit had been routine diplomatic business, trade agreements, colony permits, the usual paperwork that kept human space running smoothly within the galactic community. This time felt different. The summons had been formal, cold, and carried. An undertone of accusation that made Hayes uncomfortable. The docking procedure took longer than usual. Council security performed detailed scans of their ship, searched their belongings, and questioned each member of the delegation. Rodriguez raised an eyebrow at the treatment, but said nothing. They were guests here, even if unwelcome ones. Council chamber was a vast circular room with seats arranged in tiers rising toward a dome ceiling. Representatives from 47 different species occupied the seats, their diverse forms creating a rainbow of colors and shapes. At the center sat the Zephyrian delegation, their crystalline bodies catching and reflecting the chamber lights in brilliant patterns. Chancellor Vexstar rose from his seat, his voice echoing through translation devices that converted his harmonic tones into human language. The charges against humanity were read with mechanical precision. Unauthorized expansion beyond designated sectors, development of prohibited weapons technology, violation of 17 different council regulations, and most seriously, aggressive expansion that threatened galactic stability. Hayes listened to each accusation with growing anger. The unauthorized expansion referred to human colonies established in empty systems that no other species had claimed or even visited. The prohibited weapons were defensive systems designed to protect those colonies from raiders and hostile forces. Every regulation violation stemmed from human efforts to protect their people and ensure their survival in a galaxy that seemed increasingly hostile to their presence. When the charges were complete, Hayes stood to address the council. He spoke without notes, his words carrying the weight of 4 centuries of human space exploration. Humanity had come to the stars as explorers and traders, seeking nothing more than a place among the galactic community. They had followed council. Laws paid their fees and contributed to galactic peace and prosperity. The colonies in question were established in systems the council had declared uninhabitable or worthless. Human engineers had made them livable through hard work and innovation. The weapons technology was purely defensive, designed to protect human settlements from the raiders and hostile forces that the council seemed unable or unwilling to control. Every action humanity had taken was necessary for their survival and prosperity. Rodriguez supplemented Hayes' speech with detailed legal arguments, citing precedents and council regulations that supported human actions. She demonstrated that other species had done similar things without facing punishment, that the council had selectively enforced its rules against humanity while ignoring violations by more established members. Bennett provided military context, explaining the hostile environment that human colonies faced on the galactic frontier. Pirates, raiders, and aggressive species attacked human settlements regularly. The Council's own peacekeeping forces were inadequate to protect human interests, leaving colonists to defend themselves or die. The Council listened with apparent patience, but Hayes could see the decision had already been made. The questions from Council members were hostile and loaded with assumptions. They spoke of human aggression as if it were proven fact, of human expansion as if it were conquest rather than colonization of empty worlds. The Zephyrian Chancellor called for a recess, and the human delegation was escorted to a waiting room. For 3 hours they sat in uncomfortable silence, knowing their fate was being decided in their absence. When they were called back, the chamber felt colder, more hostile than before. Vextar announced the council's decision with ceremonial formality. By a vote of 44 to 3, humanity was found guilty of all charges. A sentence was immediate exile from the galactic community. All human colonies were to be withdrawn from contested systems within 30 standard days. All trade agreements with council members were terminated immediately. All technological exchanges were suspended. All diplomatic relations were severed. Earth, and all recognized human colonies were banned from council space indefinitely. Any human vessel found in council territory after the grace period would be considered hostile and dealt with accordingly. The decision was final and not subject to appeal. Hayes stood slowly, his age showing for the first time in years. He looked around the chamber at species humanity had considered friends and allies, now silent witnesses to their exile. Some looked uncomfortable with the decision, but none spoke in humanity's defense. As the delegation prepared to leave, Rodriguez noticed something in the wording of the exile decree. It specified Earth and its recognized colonies, but made no mention of new territories or independent settlements. The legal language was precise, as it always was in council documents, and that precision might provide an opportunity. The journey back to Earth took 2 weeks, 2 weeks of stunned silence and growing anger. Hayes spent most of the time staring out at the stars, thinking about the implications of what had happened. Bennett worked on contingency plans, military scenarios for defending human space without council support. Rodriguez studied the exile decree, looking for loopholes and opportunities. President Amanda Foster was waiting when their ship landed at Geneva Spaceport. The news had already reached Earth through faster diplomatic channels, and the world was in an uproar. Some called for immediate retaliation, others for submission and negotiation. Foster had called for calm and patience until the delegation could report in person. The briefing took place in the secure conference room beneath the United Earth Authority building. Hayes presented the events with military precision. Rodriguez provided legal analysis, and Bennett outlined the strategic situation facing humanity. When they finished, Foster sat in silence for several minutes, processing the magnitude of what had occurred. Finally, the president spoke. Her words would be remembered for centuries afterward, marking the moment when humanity chose defiance over submission. She declared that if the galaxy wanted to treat humans as outcasts, then humanity would forge its own path among the stars. The exile was not punishment, but opportunity, a chance to build something better than what they were leaving behind. Within hours, Foster addressed the world from the same podium where previous presidents had announced humanity's first contact with alien life, their admission to the galactic community, and the establishment of the first human colonies beyond the solar system. Now she announced humanity's independence from galactic authority and their determination to prosper despite exile. The speech ended with a promise that would drive human expansion for decades to come. Earth would not simply survive its exile from the galactic community. It would thrive, grow, and eventually return to show the galaxy what humanity could accomplish when freed from artificial constraints and hostile oversight. 6 months had passed since the exile decree, and Earth had transformed from a world in shock to a planet united by purpose. General Pete Morrison stood in the command center of Project New Horizon, watching hundreds of screens that showed construction sites across the solar system. Massive colony ships were taking shape in orbital shipyards that worked around the clock, their hulls gleaming under the light of welding torches and assembly robots. Chief Administrator Kate Sullivan walked up beside him, carrying a tablet filled with departure schedules. The first wave of colony ships would launch in 3 days, carrying 50,000 volunteers to star systems beyond the reach of Galactic Council authority. These were not refugees fleeing in desperation, but pioneers carrying the seeds of a new civilization. Morrison had seen many military operations during his career, but nothing compared to the scale of what humanity was attempting. Every major nation on Earth had contributed resources, personnel, and expertise to the exodus. Former enemies worked side by side, united by the common goal of proving that humanity could thrive without galactic oversight. Dr. Samuel Brooks emerged from the IDE research section, his lab coat stained with oil and his hair disheveled from days of continuous work. His team had been reverse engineering alien technology acquired before the exile, studying every device and system they could get their hands on. The breakthrough had come 2 weeks ago when they successfully replicated Zephyrian energy shields. Using human manufacturing techniques, Brooks explained his latest discovery to Morrison and Sullivan. The alien technology was not inherently superior to human engineering, just different. Council species had developed their technology along paths that emphasized stability and standardization over innovation and adaptation. Human engineers, freed from Council restrictions, were finding ways to improve on alien designs and create entirely new solutions. Captain Nicole Turner reviewed the star charts in her ready room aboard the colony ship New Horizon. Her vessel was the largest in the first wave, carrying 10,000 colonists and enough equipment to establish a major settlement. Their destination was a system the Council had labeled uninhabitable due to radiation from a nearby pulsar. But human scientists had developed shielding technology that would make colonization possible. Turner had volunteered for this mission because she believed in humanity's future among the stars. The Council had tried to cage human ambition and expansion, but the exile had instead freed them to pursue their destiny without artificial limitations. Her colonists were engineers, farmers, doctors, teachers, and craftsmen who shared that vision of unlimited possibility. The departure ceremony took place at Luna City, with President Foster addressing the assembled colonists via holographic link from Earth. She spoke of courage and determination, of the opportunity to build something better, and what they were leaving behind. The colonists listened with quiet intensity, understanding that they were participating in a historic moment that would define humanity's future. As the first wave of colony ships departed, construction began on the second wave. These vessels were larger and more advanced, incorporating lessons learned from the first designs and new technologies developed by Brooks and his research teams. Each wave would be better equipped and more capable than the last, representing humanity's rapid adaptation to their new circumstances. Tony Valdez supervised the industrial complex on New Chicago, a massive space station built in orbit around a red dwarf star. The facility had been constructed in 4 months, a feat that impressed even the human engineers who built it. Valdez had been a factory manager on Earth before the exile, but now he oversaw production of humanity's first post-exile warships. The designs were revolutionary, blending human creativity with adapted alien technology. The ships were faster, more maneuverable, and better armed than anything in the Council fleet. More importantly, they were built using manufacturing techniques that could be replicated quickly and efficiently, allowing human space to expand its defensive capabilities rapidly. On the agricultural world of Green Valley, Mayor Susan Wright watched the first harvest from genetically modified crops, designed to grow in the planet's unusual soil composition. The world had an atmosphere rich in methane and sulfur compounds that would have killed most Council species. But human colonists thrived there using environmental suits and sealed habitats. Wright had been a small-town mayor on Earth, but her experience managing limited resources and diverse populations made her perfect for colonial leadership. Green Valley was becoming a model for human adaptation, showing how colonists could turn hostile environments into productive settlements through ingenuity and determination. The research station on Kepler base pushed the boundaries of human technology even further. Chief Scientist Helen Davis led a team studying exotic matter and energy phenomena that the Council had declared too dangerous for research. Without Council restrictions, human scientists were making discoveries that advanced their understanding of physics and engineering by decades. Davis had lost her position at a Council-sponsored research facility when the exile was announced, but she considered it a blessing in disguise. Free from bureaucratic oversight and safety regulations designed for less adaptable species, her team was making breakthroughs that would have taken centuries under Council supervision. The transformation was not limited to space-based operations. Earth itself was becoming a center of innovation and production, unlike anything in its history. Factories that had once produced consumer goods were retooled to manufacture spacecraft components and colonial equipment. Universities developed new curricula focused on frontier survival and alien environment adaptation. President Foster toured a shipyard in Brazil where workers were completing the third wave of colony vessels. These ships were not just larger, but incorporated entirely new technologies developed by human research teams. Quantum processors, plasma weapons, and gravity manipulation systems that surpassed anything the Council possessed. Foster spoke with workers who had volunteered for the colonial effort, listening to their stories and motivations. Some were seeking adventure and opportunity. Others were driven by patriotic duty to support humanity's expansion. All shared a common belief that the exile represented freedom rather than punishment, a chance to prove human superiority over their former galactic neighbors. Communications from the first colonies were arriving regularly, carrying news of successful settlements and new discoveries. Captain Turner reported that New Horizon Colony had not only survived, but was thriving in its radioactive environment. The colonists had adapted their technology to harness the pulsar radiation for power generation, turning a supposed liability into an advantage. Other colonies reported similar successes. Hostile environments that would have killed Council species were becoming productive human settlements through adaptation and innovation. Each success proved that humanity's exile was the galaxy's loss and Earth's gain. Morrison reviewed the strategic situation with his staff officers, analyzing reports from across human space. In less than a year, humanity had established 43 successful colonies in systems the Council had either ignored or declared uninhabitable. Population growth in human space was accelerating as Earth-based families joined the colonial effort. More importantly, the exile had created something the Council had never intended: a unified human civilization free from external control and limitation. Earth and its colonies were no longer subject to galactic regulation or oversight, allowing them to develop technology and pursue expansion at their own pace. Admiral Rachel Parker received the distress call while her fleet was conducting patrol exercises near the Outer Rim territories. The message was fragmentary and filled with static, but the words that came through were clear enough. Alien attack, heavy casualties, request immediate assistance. The transmission originated from New Denver, a mining colony established 6 months earlier in a system rich with rare minerals. Parker ordered her fleet to maximum acceleration toward the New Denver system. The Terran Defense Fleet was still new, formed only 18 months after the exile, when it became clear that human space would need protection from hostile forces. The ships were built using revolutionary designs that combined human engineering with adapted alien technology, making them faster and more maneuverable than traditional Council vessels. The enemy they encountered at New Denver was unlike anything in Council space. The Drakethie swarm consisted of insectoid creatures that lived for conquest and destruction, viewing other species as either prey or obstacles to be eliminated. Their ships were organic in design, grown rather than built, with weapons that fired living projectiles and armor that could heal minor damage. Commander Jake Foster led the first fighter squadron to reach the embattled colony. His pilots flew modified interceptors nicknamed Hornets for their speed and agility. Foster had been a test pilot before the exile, But the war against the Drake Thee transformed him into humanity's greatest fighter ace and tactical innovator. The battle for New Denver lasted 14 hours and introduced the galaxy to human military doctrine, where Council forces relied on formation flying and predetermined tactics. Human pilots adapted constantly to changing battlefield conditions. Foster developed new attack patterns during the battle itself, coordinating his fighters in swarm formations that confused and overwhelmed Drake Thee defenders. Parker watched from the bridge of her flagship as human tactics proved superior to both alien savagery and Council military doctrine. The Drake Thee had defeated Council peacekeeping forces in previous encounters, but they had never faced an enemy that could match their adaptability and exceed their ferocity. Human pilots flew with calculated recklessness that pushed their ships beyond normal safety limits. The ground battle was equally decisive. Marine Colonel Bobby Martinez led assault troops in powered armor that had been developed for hostile environment operations. The Drake Thee warriors were physically larger and stronger than humans, but Martinez had trained his Marines to fight as coordinated units that maximized their technological advantages. Martinez established his command post in the ruins of the colony administration building, coordinating the defense of scattered civilian shelters while his troops engaged Drake Thee landing forces. The aliens fought with primitive weapons and relied on overwhelming numbers, but human soldiers used superior tactics and equipment to turn every engagement into a victory. The battle reached its climax when Foster led a desperate assault on the Drake Thee command ship. His squadron had been reduced to 6 fighters, but they managed to penetrate the enemy vessel's organic defenses and destroy its central nervous system. The death of the command ship caused the entire Drake Thee fleet to lose coordination, allowing Parker's forces to achieve total victory. News of the New Denver battle spread throughout human space and beyond. The Drake Thee swarm had been considered invincible by Council military analysts, a force of nature that could only be avoided rather than defeated. Human forces had not only stopped the Drake Thee attack, but had completely annihilated the attacking force with minimal losses. Captain Linda Chun commanded the follow-up operation that carried the war into Drake Thee space. Her fleet consisted of the newest human warships, vessels that incorporated lessons learned from the New Denver battle and featured weapon systems designed specifically for fighting organic technology. Chun had been a cargo ship captain before the Exile, but the war transformed her into one of humanity's most effective naval commanders. The assault on the Drake Thee home system demonstrated human military evolution in action. Rather than attacking the heavily defended central worlds directly, Chun's forces targeted the outlying support systems that supplied the swarm with resources and reinforcements. Human intelligence had identified the biological dependencies that kept Drake Thee technology functioning, and Chun exploited those weaknesses ruthlessly. Martinez led the ground assault on the primary Drake Thee breeding world, a planet covered in organic hives that produced new warriors for the swarm. His Marines used flame weapons and biological agents designed to destroy the alien reproductive infrastructure. The attack was not just military conquest, but species-level warfare that eliminated the Drake Thee ability to threaten human space. The final battle took place in orbit around the Drake Thee throne world, where the ancient Queen Mother controlled the entire swarm through biological telepathy. Chun's fleet faced the largest concentration of Drake Thee vessels ever assembled, but human tactical superiority and technological advancement proved decisive. The battle lasted 6 days and ended with the complete destruction of Drake Thee military. Capability. Foster commanded the fighter screen that protected Chun's capital ships during the Throne World assault. His pilots had developed new techniques for fighting organic vessels, using precision strikes to sever neural connections and disable enemy ships without destroying them completely. The captured Drake Thee technology would prove invaluable for human research and development efforts. The war ended when Martinez led a commando raid that captured the Queen Mother herself. Without their central controlling intelligence, the remaining Drakethid evolved into mindless drones that could be easily defeated or controlled. The species that had terrorized the Outer Rim for centuries was reduced to a servant race working in human mining operations. Parker addressed her fleet commanders as they prepared to return to human space. The war against the Drake, he had lasted 8 months and resulted in complete human victory. But more importantly, it had established humanity's reputation as a military power to be respected and feared. The exile intended to weaken Earth had instead created a force that surpassed Council military capabilities. Intelligence reports indicated that several minor species had taken notice of human military success. The Veltar Confederation and the Korax Republic had both suffered defeats at Drakethid hands in previous years, and they were quietly reaching out to humanity for protection and alliance. The exile intended to isolate Earth was instead creating the foundation for a new power. Block.Chan reviewed the strategic situation with her staff officers as her fleet returned to human space. The captured Drakethid technology included biological engineering techniques that could enhance human military capabilities, while the conquered swarm territories provided resources and strategic depth for continued expansion. Most importantly, the war had proven that human military doctrine was superior to both Council peacekeeping methods and alien aggression. Foster returned to his home base as humanity's greatest war hero, but his real contribution was the tactical innovations he had developed during the conflict. Human fighter doctrine now emphasized adaptability and innovation over rigid formation flying, while ground forces had proven that technological superiority could overcome any physical disadvantage. The war's end brought new challenges and opportunities. Human space now included former Drakethid territories that doubled the size of human-controlled territory, while captured alien technology provided insights that accelerated human military development. More importantly, the conflict had demonstrated that humanity's exile from the Council was their former allies' loss and Earth's tremendous gain. Ambassador Dan Kelly stood in the reception hall of the Shender Republic capital, watching as reptilian diplomats prepared for the signing ceremony that would bring their species into the Terran Alliance. 10 years had passed since humanity's exile from the Galactic Council, and the empire they had built operated on principles that the Council had never imagined possible. The Shender had been a proud spacefaring civilization for over 2,000 years, but recent defeats at the hands of Council-backed forces had left them desperate for new allies. Their advanced shipbuilding techniques were legendary throughout the galaxy, but they lacked the military innovation and tactical flexibility that had made humanity dominant in their region of space. Kelly had spent 6 months negotiating the alliance terms, offering the Shender something the Council never provided: genuine partnership based on mutual benefit, rather than subordination to ancient hierarchies. The reptilian species would contribute their shipbuilding expertise to human fleet construction while receiving protection from hostile neighbors and access to human markets that offered better prices than Council trade networks. Director Helen Morris reviewed intelligence reports in her secure office deep beneath the surface of New Geneva, the administrative capital of human space. Her Terran intelligence service had infiltrated Council territory far more effectively than anyone suspected, with agents placed in key positions throughout the galactic government and military hierarchy. The reports painted a picture of growing instability within Council space. Member species faced increasing taxes and restrictions while watching humanity's allies prosper under more favorable terms. Trade routes were shifting toward human-controlled territory as merchants discovered that Terran markets offered better prices and fewer bureaucratic obstacles than traditional Council commerce. Morris had spent her career in intelligence work, But the exile had transformed a routine job into the foundation of an empire. Human agents operated throughout the galaxy, using techniques and technologies that Council security services could not detect or counter. Information flowed back to human space faster and more accurately than official Council communications reached. Their own member worlds. Governor Rick Santos supervised the morning shift change at the underwater cities of Blue Harbor, an ocean world where human colonists had created a thriving aquatic civilization. The planet's surface was covered entirely by water, making it uninhabitable for most Council species. But human engineers had built floating cities and underwater habitats that housed over 5 million people. Santos had been a marine biologist before the exile, but colonial leadership had taught him that human adaptability extended far beyond what anyone had imagined possible. Blue Harbor's colonists had developed new technologies for underwater agriculture, deep-sea mining, and oceanic transportation that surpassed anything in Council databases. The ocean world had become a center for biological and genetic research, with human scientists studying native sea life to develop new medical treatments and industrial processes. More importantly, Blue Harbor demonstrated that humans could thrive in environments that other species considered completely unsuitable for civilization. Administrator Mary Johnson watched the sunrise over the crystal formations of New Arizona, a desert world that had become humanity's premier center for advanced materials research. The planet's extreme temperatures and toxic atmosphere would have killed most Council species within minutes. But human colonists used environmental suits and climate-controlled habitats to create a productive scientific community. Johnson had managed desert reclamation projects on Earth before joining the colonial effort, and her experience with hostile environments made her perfect for frontier leadership. New Arizona's researchers had developed new alloys, ceramics, and composite materials that gave human technology significant advantages over Council equivalents. The research conducted on New Arizona contributed to every aspect of human expansion, from spacecraft construction to planetary terraforming. Scientists worked in laboratories carved into mountainsides, protected from the planet's harsh environment, while studying phenomena that advanced human understanding of physics and engineering. Chief Engineer Paul Davis inspected the final assembly of the first Titan-class battleship at the Hidden Forge Worlds, massive industrial complexes built in asteroid fields beyond the reach of Council sensors. The ship was larger than anything in the Council fleet, incorporating revolutionary technologies that made it nearly unstoppable in combat. Davis had designed starships for civilian use before the exile, but military necessity had transformed him into humanity's premier naval architect. The Titan-class vessels featured quantum armor that could absorb and redirect energy weapons, plasma lance systems that could destroy enemy ships with single shots, and artificial intelligence systems that assisted human crews in tactical decision-making. The Forge Worlds represented the culmination of human industrial development, combining resources from dozens of colonies with manufacturing techniques that exceeded Council capabilities. These hidden facilities could construct warships faster and more efficiently than traditional shipyards while maintaining complete secrecy from hostile intelligence services. Cully concluded his negotiations with the Shender leadership, finalizing an agreement that would integrate their shipbuilding facilities with human military production. The reptilian species brought centuries of engineering experience and manufacturing capability, while humans provided military protection and access to markets that offered genuine prosperity rather than mere survival. The signing ceremony was broadcast throughout human space and beyond, demonstrating to the galaxy that the Terran Alliance was expanding through voluntary association rather than conquest. Species joined because human partnership offered advantages that Council membership could not match: technological advancement, economic opportunity, and protection from hostile forces. Morris received reports indicating that other species were considering similar arrangements. The Corax Republic had initiated secret negotiations through intermediaries, while several minor civilizations had directly requested human protection from Council-backed aggressors. The exile intended to isolate humanity was instead creating a rival power structure that operated by superior principles. Santus coordinated with administrators on other colony worlds to establish intersystem trade networks that bypassed Council commerce entirely. Blue Harbor's biological products were in high demand throughout human space, while New Arizona's advanced materials supported construction projects across dozens of star systems. The colonial administrators had developed economic relationships that made human space largely self-sufficient while providing goods and services that attracted customers from Council territory. Merchants and traders increasingly chose human markets over traditional Council commerce, drawn by better prices and fewer regulatory obstacles. Johnson supervised research projects that pushed the boundaries of human knowledge into areas this Council had declared too dangerous or impractical for investigation. Free from bureaucratic oversight and safety regulations designed for less adaptable species, human scientists were making discoveries that advanced their civilization by decades rather than years. Davis completed construction of the third Titan-class battleship, part of a fleet that could challenge Council military supremacy if diplomatic relations deteriorated further. The hidden nature of human military production meant that Council intelligence services had no accurate assessment of Terran defensive capabilities or expansion plans. The empire humanity had built from exile now controlled over 200 star systems through a combination of direct colonization, allied species, and protectorate arrangements. Unlike the bureaucratic Council, the Terran Alliance operated on pragmatic principles that encouraged growth and innovation rather than stagnation and control. Fleet Admiral Steve Collins watched the massive Galactic Council station grow larger on his command screen as the Terran Expeditionary Force approached Proxima Centauri. 15 years had passed since humanity's exile from this same station, and Collins commanded a fleet that could reduce the structure to atoms if negotiations failed to produce acceptable results. Director Helen Morris had provided intelligence about the Council's planned preemptive strike against human territory. Information gathered by agents who had infiltrated the highest levels of galactic government. The Council faced a crisis of legitimacy, as half their member species had either joined the Terran Alliance or were in secret negotiations to abandon their traditional allegiances. Collins had served as a junior officer during humanity's original exile, watching helplessly as Admiral Hayes was forced to accept the Council's unjust verdict. Now he commanded the most powerful fleet ever assembled, representing an empire that spanned 400 star systems and included dozens of allied species, who had chosen human leadership over Council bureaucracy. The flagship carried Admiral Hayes himself, now 73 years old, but still sharp and determined to see justice done. Hayes would address the same Council that had cast humanity into exile, but this time he spoke for a civilization that had proven its superiority through achievement rather than ancient privilege. Vexstar received the human delegation in the same chamber where the exile had been pronounced, but the room was half empty, as former Council members had already abandoned their traditional allegiances. The crystalline Zephyrian leader had aged poorly during the 15 years of human expansion, his once brilliant surface now dulled by stress and political failure. Hayes entered the chamber wearing the uniform of the Terran Alliance rather than the simple diplomatic attire he had worn during his previous visit. Behind him walked Collins in full military dress, a reminder that humanity no longer came as supplicants, hoping for acceptance, but as conquerors, offering one final chance for peace. The charges against humanity had evolved during the years of exile. The Council now accused Earth of building an illegal empire, violating territorial boundaries, and threatening galactic stability through aggressive expansion. Vexstar spoke with desperate authority, trying to maintain the illusion that the Council still possessed the power to enforce its will against human interests. Hayes listened to the accusations with calm patience before rising to address the assembly. His speech was not a defense, but a statement of fact. Humanity had built a superior civilization, while the Council stagnated under the weight of bureaucracy and ancient prejudices. The exile, intended as punishment, had become the foundation for humanity's greatest achievement. The Terran Alliance offered genuine partnership based on merit and contribution rather than birthright and political maneuvering. Species earned their place through achievement and innovation, not through submission to outdated hierarchies that served no useful purpose. Half the galaxy had already recognized this reality by choosing human leadership over Council authority. Hayes presented the Council with an ultimatum rather than a request. They could accept humanity as an equal power and establish new diplomatic relations based on mutual respect, or they could face the consequences of 15 years of hostility toward Earth and its allies. The choice was theirs, but the time for negotiation was limited. Collins monitored fleet communications from his position behind the diplomatic delegation. Captain Nancy Williams commanded the assault ships positioned around the station, while Commander Greg Thompson led fighter squadrons that could overwhelm Council defenses within minutes. The Terran fleet represented military capabilities that the Council had never imagined possible. Vexstar made the fatal mistake of ordering Council defense forces to attack the human vessels, perhaps believing that ancient Zephyrian technology could still compete with human innovation. The Battle of Proxima Station lasted 6 hours and demonstrated the complete superiority of Terran military doctrine over traditional Council tactics. Williams led the boarding parties that captured key sections of the station, while Thompson's fighters swept aside Council resistance with minimal losses. Human Marines wore powered armor that shrugged off Council weapons while carrying plasma rifles that could penetrate any known defense system. The battle was less a conflict than a demonstration of overwhelming technological and tactical superiority. Council's defense fleet was destroyed or captured within the first 2 hours of fighting. Their ships used outdated designs and tactics that could not compete with human vessels, incorporating 15 years of continuous innovation and improvement. Council commanders had prepared for the military capabilities humanity possessed during the exile, not the empire they had actually built. Hayes watched from the command deck as Council resistance collapsed throughout the station. The species that had once judged humanity unworthy of galactic citizenship now faced the reality that they had created their own destruction through short-sighted prejudice and bureaucratic incompetence. The Treaty of New Geneva was signed aboard the captured Council station, with Hayes representing the Terran Alliance and the few remaining Council members accepting terms that acknowledged their complete defeat. Rather than demanding revenge for 15 years of hostility, humanity offered a new galactic order based on achievement and contribution rather than ancient privilege. Collins supervised the establishment of Terran administrative control over former Council territory as species throughout the galaxy announced their allegiance to human leadership. The transition was remarkably smooth, as most civilizations had already concluded that the Council represented a failed system that could not compete with Terran efficiency and innovation. Williams commanded the security forces that maintained order during the political transition, but resistance was minimal. Council member species had observed 15 years of Terran Alliance prosperity, while their own civilizations stagnated under bureaucratic control. The choice between continued decline and participation in human success was obvious to any rational observer. Thompson coordinated the integration of former Council military assets into the expanding Terran defense fleet. Most Council vessels were obsolete by human standards, but they could be upgraded with Terran technology and crewed by species Eager to participate in humanity's continued expansion throughout the galaxy, President Foster addressed the combined human and alien populations of the new Terran Galactic Empire from the former council chamber, now converted into the seat of a government that operated on principles of merit and achievement rather than tradition and hereditary privilege. Her speech was broadcast throughout the galaxy, announcing a new era of exploration and prosperity. Hayes stood beside Foster as she concluded her address, reflecting on the journey that had brought humanity from exile to galactic leadership. The Council's punishment had become Earth's greatest opportunity, transforming a single species into the foundation for a civilization that would guide the galaxy toward a future of unlimited possibility and achievement. The former Galactic Council existed only as a historical footnote, remembered as a cautionary tale about the dangers of bureaucratic stagnation and prejudicial governance. The empire humanity built from exile had become the foundation for a golden age that would last for centuries, proving that sometimes the greatest victories emerge from apparent defeat.